What's going on, everybody? Josh Engleman for Awesemo.com, and I am back with my FanDuel single-game breakdown for tonight's football game between the Buffalo Bills and the San Francisco 49ers. Now be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all of our other content goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman so you can get updates to these sim results as we get closer to lock. And finally, let me know in the comments section, who are your picks at MVP and at Flex for tonight's game? The high-level stuff. Average fantasy points in the optimal lineup, 103.5. Median salary used, $59,000. 2.6 Bills, 2.4 49ers. That's the optimal build for tonight's slate. Bills, 1-point favorites in San Francisco, 47-point game total. Now, it is time to dive into the MVPs. So at MVP, this one is a no-brainer at the top. There is no way around it. There is a clear best MVP option, and that is absolutely Josh Allen. 16,500. I have him projected for 21.5 fantasy points. That is, 6-ish more than Nick Mullins. 7 full points ahead of Stephon Diggs. Allen shows up in the optimal MVP spot 42% of the time. He's just going to likely have the highest fantasy total. It's hard to pass up there. If you're trying to be a little bit different, there are two other options that I've already mentioned. Stephon Diggs at 14,500 shows up in the optimal 15% of the time. Nick Mullins, 13,000 on FanDuel, shows up in the optimal 18% of the time. Now, I guess there's a little bit of fear that Nick Mullins might not be the starter by the end of the game. Seems like every time I roster a 49ers quarterback, it just ends up being the backup that finishes the game. So buyer beware there. But Allen, Diggs, and Mullins are making up like 75% of all possible MVP outcomes. There's not a ton to look at otherwise. You can go to Mostert at 14K. He only shows up in the optimal at MVP 7% of the time. That's half of Diggs. That could become an ownership play if he happens to go like fully unowned. But for right now, I'm going to have a very difficult time recommending anyone other than Allen, Diggs, or Mullins in the MVP spot. Now, when we go to the flex spot, things are a lot different. At the top, pretty clearly, too, is Nick Mullins. So 13,000, he's got a very cheap salary for a quarterback and the second highest projection. That's enough to put him in the optimal lineup 50% of the time. No one else is above 34. So it's kind of crazy how far and away Nick Mullins is as the best flex option. He should be the most popular. If he's not, jam him in even more. After that, we get a mix of guys in the mid-30s. So Josh Allen shows up in 35% of all optimal lineups in the flex spot. I think that he's going to be significantly more owned at the flex than what I'm saying. So be aware of that. Don't be afraid to send your Josh Allen shares to the MVP spot. After Allen, we take a big drop down in salary. Tyler Bass at 8,500 shows up in 34% of the lineups. Gabriel Davis at 7,500 shows up in 32% of optimal lineups. Those are the only guys north of 30%. So it's pretty bunched together because then I can just name everybody. Diggs, 29.8. Mostert, 26. Samuel, 27. Cole Beasley, 29. Singletary, 23. Robbie Gould, 26. Even Jordan Reed at 18. Everybody's packed into this 20 range, but Allen, Mullins, Bass, Gabriel Davis, those four guys are the four best flex options on the slate. Now, I don't have ownership as per usual on a Monday morning, but we can talk a little bit about guys that I think might be fadeable. I'm going to go out on a limb and think that Stephon Diggs could potentially be over-owned at the MVP spot. He only shows up in that spot 15% of the time for me. I could see his projected ownership being north of that number. I wouldn't mind being at least a little light on Diggs' MVP spot. I kind of feel the same way about Mostert at the flex. Only shows up in the optimal 26% of the time. He's the third most expensive player. I could see a scenario where his ownership is in the mid-30s, at which point I would like to be pretty light on Mostert. I think Deebo Samuel could go underrepresented because of Nick Mullins' price tag. Keep a close eye on Samuel's ownership. If that comes in the low 20s, he's a guy that I'd like to get a bit more of. I don't have much interest in Zach Moss at 11,500. I don't have much interest in Jerick McKinnon at 10,500. McKinnon, in fact, only shows up in the optimal about 8% of the time. I'd rather go to everybody below him. Beasley, Singletary, Robbie Gould if you need it. McKinnon doesn't look very good in the at that $10,000 McKinnon doesn't look very good at the $10,500 mark. And if anybody's getting to him, if that ownership comes up north of 10%, I think that's just a benefit to you. You're able to use that salary elsewhere. It's so much easier to drop down. I have McKinnon at about 7 fantasy points. I have Gabriel Davis at 8. Gabriel Davis is $3,000 cheaper. It's going to be hard to justify McKinnon's salary. That's why I like dropping down from McKinnon. And then Kendrick Bourne at 8K, another guy that I think will probably be slightly over-owned, only shows up in the optimal about 12% of the time. If his ownership number comes in anywhere north of that 12, I can pretty much guarantee that I will have 0. And in the grand scheme of things, if Tevin Coleman is active, even at 7,500, I think he's a little bit too expensive. Only shows up in optimals about 6% of the time. Man, it's really difficult to do these shows and videos when you don't have enough coffee in your body yet. But thank you guys for joining me. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. And the biggie, follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman so you can get the updates to the sim results as we get closer to lock. As information changes, as we get more projected ownership, I can get a better idea of what this slate is going to look like. You don't want to miss those sim results later on today. And take a peek around. There should be a DraftKings version of this video. If you're playing on both sites, watch them both. They're very different. Thank you guys for joining me. I will be back Thursday morning for a Thursday showdown video. I assume there's a Thursday game. I'm just guessing right now. I hope there's a Thursday game. And if there is, I will have a video for it. Good luck tonight. I'll talk to you again on Thursday.